If you had to pick one mushroom that supports the gut, what would your go-to be?
Yeah, well, I think you've already, yeah. So lion's mane would be the main one that we would think of, and there is quite a lot of research on lots of different aspects of this. But yeah, it's definitely, it's amazing what it can do. And it's one level is the fact that it really helps with rebalancing the gut microbiota. But another aspect of it is that it actually stimulates something called nerve growth factor, which then encourages the growth of nerve cells. So, you talked about, when the gut gets irritated, the lining is thin, and then that can then cause some, sort of, I think you said crosstalk between what's inside and what's outside. So we could call that some leaky gut. And one of the great things with lion's mane is that it doesn't just balance the gut bacteria, which helps with healing the gut lining, but also it actually helps heal the whole enteric nervous system, the nervous system in the gut, as well as peripheral and central nervous system. So it's actually supporting this whole gut-brain axis and helping to heal the lining of the gut much more efficiently than just a probiotic, a prebiotic that might be helping with the imbalance. It's also encouraging, healthy tissue growth, and particularly this nervous tissue in the gut as well.
Thank you for explaining. Really well explained. It's an amazing connection. And, like you've said, we can use it to support the gut barrier. So if there's permeability problems, which is, very common, we can use it to support cases of dysbiosis, extremely common. And you mentioned that gut-brain connection. I mean, this again is a really hot topic. We know so much now about how, an imbalance in the gut can have an imbalance in the brain, basically, to put it simply. If we have, put it in simple terms, leaky gut or dysbiosis in the gut, we're more likely to have problems associated with the brain. That could be various different things. But it's amazing we've got a mushroom here that covers both areas. I mean, lion's mane for me, total geek around lion's mane. I love this mushroom. My students, I think, wind me up because I'm always like, oh, lion's mane could probably work for that. It's a great mushroom. And again, another one to Google image, I think, isn't it? I mean, the appearance. Tell the listeners about the appearance of this amazing mushroom.
Yeah, so it's not kind of, if you think of a mushroom, this is not at all the image that you would get. So it's basically like another one of the names that I think the English common name is bearded tooth mushroom, and that kind of gives you an idea. It's like it basically has all of these tiny little filaments. So the fruiting body, instead of being like a solid, smooth mass, it has all of these tiny little hairs that actually look like a lion's mane, and it tends to grow sort of on the side or underneath things. So you get these amazing kind of waterfalls, and it's sort of very white, sometimes slightly yellow, but it's really beautiful and pristine. And very attractive mushroom.
And it is edible, isn't it?
Yeah, no, luckily I've actually managed to get it at my local farmer's market in the last couple of years. So it's delicious. If you ever get a chance to try lion's mane, I really recommend it. It's almost like kind of vegan lobster.
Right.
It's very sweet and subtle and quite soft textured. So yeah, really, really good.
Amazing. I've used lion's mane actually. I like to use lion's mane for general nerve related problems. So for example, if I've got somebody that has had a nerve injury, or patients that have had a stroke, for example, or one of my patients recently has motor neurone disease, it's really interesting because there is a lot of research talking about the specific compounds in lion's mane that promote nerve growth factor. So we actually know quite a lot about it. And it can help, if I'm not mistaken, even with the myelination, which is the coating around our nerves that kind of helps our nerves to transmit. Of course, we lose myelin, we lose that coating in conditions like multiple sclerosis. So although, as far as I'm aware, there's not, big kind of research pointing out that, yes, we can use it for this treatment, but certainly from a physiological perspective, there is a potential there that with some more studies would be really interesting to delve into.
Yeah, I totally agree. Exactly. I mean, there's definitely evidence that, the active compounds, the hericinones and erinacines, these are kind of key active compounds in lion's mane, that they will have this remyelination effect, that they will stimulate nerve growth factor, that they will stimulate other chemicals in the brain that are to do with mood management as well as nervous system healing. So it kind of works, lion's mane is for neurological, healing, reducing degeneration, maintenance, but also for mood management. But as you say, not very much research or human studies have been done yet, but there's really good potential there, because the mechanisms, we know that this happens, and that there is some studies, like you mentioned, talking about nerve injuries. There's animal studies of, using lion's mane and it helping with, regenerating peripheral nerves and, like hind leg injury. And, there's definitely evidence that shows this is a really interesting area of research.
Amazing, really amazing. And I think this is where at the moment we're at that point with this sort of mushroom where we're sort of going, well, we know the potential mechanisms, we know the actions. Yes, we don't have extremely strong evidence for this yet if we look at, kind of scientific research, but there is suggestions there. And obviously us as clinicians, we're using them and we're seeing how it works based on that mechanism. And we're obviously not promising the world to our patients. We're just saying, let's see how it goes, and we're keeping it very simple. But, we're seeing the benefits, aren't we, in clinic? I remember having one patient actually where it really stands out from me who, it was quite an unfortunate one, really. It was actually a post-vaccine injury. And this guy was in his mid-50s, had his first COVID vaccine, and literally within almost hours, he was starting to decline. And then the next day, he developed severe tingling and numbness, and he basically started to develop gradual paralysis. There was a query. He went to the hospital. They didn't know what it was. They sort of thought, is it, they acknowledged that this is what it is. It's an injury post-vaccination. But they didn't know whether it was a condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which for those listening is sort of where your immune system attacks the nervous system, basically. But they said, look, we don't know what it is. He sort of calmed down a bit, came in to see me, and it really was just in a bad way. Had power loss in his muscles, tingling, really not in a good place. And the first substance I thought of was, well, let's try lion's mane. Again, didn't promise him anything at all. The response he had was unbelievable. I mean, within 2 months, he was virtually symptom-free. And it was amazing. Obviously, there were different things we were using, but that was a key part of my protocol on the basis of some of what we know. And who knows? We don't know for sure. There's no certainty here, of course, whether it was that or other things. He might have just resolved otherwise. But I think from what I saw, that might have been why. So it's interesting. And I know a lot of practitioners that use lion's mane and other mushrooms and get similar effects, maybe where the research is, but it just shows so much promise for potential for the future for how we might use these.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I was thinking about one of the cases that kind of stood out for me was also with lion's mane and a patient who had Crohn's, and which is a disease of the inflammatory bowel disease where the lining of the gut kind of gets eaten away, and and she had kind of scans and had quite a lot of lesions in her gut, and the doctors were really pushing for her to have Western treatment, and I helped her change her diet, and she was taking a range of supplements, and it was kind of managing her symptoms and reducing it. And then, I decided, well, she needed to give up smoking, which she did, and we introduced lion's mane. And then I think it was even just 3 months later when she had her next scan, basically they said, you're in complete remission. And so, I'm sure this, like stopping smoking was a major part of it. But, we started with the lion's mane powder and then a concentrated extract. And, and she was taking that and, her gut completely healed. So amazing. I think that combination of taking out a trigger factor, putting something in that helped the body to heal faster. And, and she's managed to sort of maintain, that remission since then with kind of looking after her stress, not going back to smoking. Yeah. But it's made a massive difference.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. It's a very powerful mushroom. And I think, if we haven't sold lion's mane by now, Hanya, I don't know what else we could do. We should probably talk about another mushroom. Let's think of other areas, because we've spoken about the immune system. We've spoken about its potential role in cancer. We've spoken about the gut-brain axis, gut-brain connection. What other things do we use medicinal mushrooms for?
Well, I mean, in a way, you can kind of use them for most things. They're, as well as being, immune modulating, there are a number of mushrooms, like we talked a bit about lion's mane, but those that manage the central nervous system. So something like reishi, it is one of the most immunomodulating mushrooms, but it's also known as a nervous system balancer. So it's something that, has been used in traditional medicine for sleep, stress, anxiety, depression, pain, for millennia. And now there is research, in each of these areas. And it's one that is kind of known for calming the nervous system and for helping to sort of slow down or reduce the stress response. So that's one that is a really useful one. And the other kind of key thing, like, if you look at any of the traditional mentions of reishi, it's considered the mushroom of eternal youth. And that's because one of the key things that it does is it's an anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. I think actually it's possibly one of the most potent antioxidants out there. And so, of course, what that is doing is, oxidation and inflammation are two of the things that cause cellular aging. So, taking reishi preventatively is going to be one of those things that is reducing inflammation and oxidation in the body. So from a longevity point of view, it's a wonderful mushroom. But then if you have any conditions where oxidation or inflammation are an issue, which is pretty much all Western diseases, or living in a city and being stressed and breathing polluted air, it's also going to be having a counterbalancing effect there.
Wow. I mean, the mushroom of eternal youth. Again, you've sold that one. So it's sort of a healthy aging mushroom. You can think of it that way. And fantastic what you just described there.